Have you ever seen a flow that looks like this and got stressed out about having to maintain it? Well, flows like that are just as bad as code that looks like this. Automations like these are messy, poorly written, hard to examine, and a nightmare to maintain. Unfortunately, I have seen messy automations like this throughout my Salesforce career. We have to start building cleaner automations in all areas of Salesforce. And in order to become a rockstar developer, you must learn how to write clean code. Let's take a closer look at how well-built flows can help you start writing cleaner code. It's time to elevate your skill set. You may be wondering, what exactly is clean code? Well, I'm glad you asked. Code in Salesforce is clean when it's easy to understand, is maintainable, and is scalable. By the way, the term clean code is inspired by the book Clean Code by Robert Martin. And there are several other books that cover this topic. But today I'm going to cover my version of what I consider to be clean code in Salesforce. Creating clean automations is important. And here's why. Flows and code that are hard to understand and maintain will contribute to technical debt in your Salesforce orgs. Technical debt slowly gets worse over time and eventually has to be fixed. But these issues can be reduced or even avoided if you slow down and think through your solutions before you build them. Preventing technical debt will allow your team to spend more time building out cool features for your end users. Finally, creating cleaner automations helps teams collaborate more efficiently. Anyone at any time should be able to understand how your automation works. However, there are times when admins and developers end up building messy automations because they want to deliver the fastest working solutions, no matter how sloppy it is. It might take longer to build cleaner automations, but it should also allow for quicker updates and less bugs in the future. With that being said, it's important to understand that the fastest solution is not always the best solution. Now, let's go over some tips that can help you start writing cleaner code in Salesforce. If you've ever worked on a complex flow, especially one that someone else built, you know how important it is to have descriptive and accurate names for everything, including the flow elements, the variables, and even the name of the actual flow. Without descriptive names, it is extremely hard to follow what is actually going on in the flow. This is also true for Apex code. Take the following code, for example. At a glance, it isn't easy to understand what is happening in the code because the names of the variables aren't very descriptive. It would be so much easier if the variables were named based on the data that is supposed to be contained in each variable. Let's upgrade this code and add some descriptive names. Wow, that looks better already. We can now tell that this is an opportunity trigger that will update the opportunity's close date to today's date if the stage name is updated to closed lost. Additionally, it will check to see if the opportunity's amount is greater than $50,000. And if so, it will send an email alert to the owner of the opportunity to notify them about the lost deal. This concept of descriptive naming should be used for more than just variables in Apex. You should also ensure that other areas of your Apex code are named properly, including class names, trigger names, method names, and more. Here's a quick pro tip. In addition to descriptive naming, you'll also want to use naming conventions for Apex code. This will ensure that the code in your Salesforce org is named in a consistent way. Untangling a messy flow is not the most ideal scenario. During those moments, you're probably wondering why the flow wasn't structured in a visually appealing way. Properly structuring your flows is similar to formatting your Apex code. Here's an example of some messy Apex code that updates the next step field on opportunities. I will show you how to format this code, and you can use these tips to begin organizing your code in a clean way. First, you'll want to use proper indentation. Indentation visually separates different blocks of code like loops, conditional statements, and methods. Next, you'll want to group your code in logical ways using blank lines. This provides another way of visually separating your code. You'll also want to avoid putting a lot of code on a single line. For example, I split this long query into multiple lines. Here's another pro tip. You can use tools like Prettier that will automatically format your code for you based on rules you set. This tool not only works for Apex, but can also work for other programming languages, including JavaScript. As I mentioned in part 1 of this Flow in the Apex series, comments in Apex are very similar to the descriptions that you add in flows. Here are some examples of how you can leverage comments in your Apex code. First, you should add comments for complex code. For example, this code snippet contains a regular expression, which is used to find patterns in text. However, regular expressions are typically hard to decipher. So I've added a comment to explain that this code will be used to find email addresses in text. Next, you should add comments to give an overview of any methods you create, including descriptions of parameters and expected return values. Finally, you should add comments to give an overview of your Apex files, including classes, triggers, and tests. And you can also mention the areas of Salesforce where this file is referenced. Just remember to limit the amount of comments that you add to your code, because adding a lot of comments to your code can actually make it look a lot messier. Building duplicate logic throughout flows is bad practice. Whenever you need to make updates to that logic, you'll have to update several areas of a flow or even update that same logic in multiple flows. This can be avoided by leveraging subflows and Apex actions to bundle up logic that you plan on reusing across multiple flows. So your Apex code needs to be reusable as well, and you need to avoid copying and pasting logic all over your code. Instead, what you can do is to write your code in a way where it can be reused more than once. To do this, you can create reusable methods and classes in your code base that can be referenced in other areas of Salesforce. That way, when logic needs to be updated, you can update it in a single location, and that update will be available in any place where this reusable code is referenced. In this example, I have created a reusable Apex method that can be used to calculate a discounted price by passing in the original price and the discount rate. This method can be referenced anywhere that we need to calculate a discount, and if I ever need to adjust the discount logic, I can just update it in this single location. Pro tip time. Utility classes, component controllers, and trigger handlers are good examples of places where you can add reusable code. Just ensure that you aren't trying to overcomplicate your solutions in order to make them reusable. Sometimes the most simplistic code or the most simplistic flows is all that is needed for a solution. You should avoid hard coding things in your flows that you know may change, such as record IDs, labels, and more. You can make sections of your flows configurable by using custom labels, custom metadata, and custom settings. You can also use these configuration features in your Apex code. You want to make sections of your code configurable so that anyone, even admins, can make quick updates to things like logic and wording. In this example, I've created some custom metadata that stores custom error messages. I can avoid hard coding error messages by querying these custom metadata records. Now, if a client asks for an error message to be updated, I can just update the custom metadata record instead of having to update the code. Regardless of the timelines on your projects, you should always take the time to review your solutions, think them through, and ensure that you are building out any automations in a clean way. Do this not only for yourself, but for the developers that will need to maintain your work in the future. Thanks for watching. Now let's go shock the world.